What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. It's Wednesday. Time to take a look at my favorite trade targets for week 10. Number one option at running back in my eyes is Quinshon Judkins when you kind of factor in how easy it is, how difficult it is to get each running back. On bye last week, so he didn't get any production there. Massive bust in week 8 against the Patriots. Every running back is a massive bust against the Patriots. So it does make him a few weeks removed from that massive 3-touchdown game against the Dolphins. The Browns are definitely going to be trash on offense all season, but let's be honest, everyone knows that, right? No one that's rostering Judkins right now actually thinks the Browns are going to be a top 10, even top 20 offense rest of the season. Everyone knows they're going to be a bottom 5 offense rest of the season. Gabriel is terrible. Shedeur is definitely not good. Like, even if they end up going to him, it is incredibly unlikely that he ends up being better. Odds are he is even worse. But I'm still optimistic about the fantasy outlook for Judkins. I'd be very excited to play him at running back 2 each week. First off, yes, he is absolutely game script dependent, but I think people are kind of overrating just how game script dependent he is because those down games have happened more recently. 2 duds recently against the Steelers and the Patriots, both in blowout losses. But he does have 2 other games where the Browns did lose in blowout form, and he had 71 yards in one of them, 115 yards in a score in the other. So it's not like he can't have a good game in a blowout loss. It just happened to be that in those games, he was also not being very effective, right? If you're having a blowout and you're not effective, well, of course, they're not just going to keep feeding you 30 touches for 40 yards, right? If it's not working, they are going to go away from it. But there's reason to be very optimistic moving forward. I mean, the schedule really isn't that difficult. They're favorites against the Jets, just decimated defense this coming week. So he is going to be an amazing play this weekend. Then they get the Ravens, probably going to lose that game. But again, Ravens defense not one we're fearing. The Raiders, that's a winnable game for Cleveland. 49ers, the Titans after that, that's another winnable game for Cleveland. The Bears don't have a defense we're scared of. And then it's Bills and Steelers. So not only are their next 2 games, games that are good defenses, the next game they're favored. They're actually, if you look at their spread for the 8 remaining games, again, this is the Browns. We're thinking they're not going to win very many games this season. In 4 of their final 8 games, the spread is a field goal or less. So in half of their games, we should actually see a neutral to positive game script for the Cleveland Browns, combined with some of these other games where they're underdogs, still going against very soft defenses for fantasy scoring to the running back position. So I just feel like people, because it's a little bit more removed, people forget he had great games against the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings. He was one of the better running back prospects in a great class for rookie running backs. He clearly is a hit talent-wise too. It's not like, oh, he's a great prospect, we'll see if he's good. It's pretty clear he is one of the best rookie running backs in this class. And so you've got that. He's produced in tough matchups, but he's got good matchups going forward. More games that are winnable for Cleveland than you would think. So I don't know. I just think if you're going after like a high-end running back too, he just has to be the name you're going after, because I don't think anyone's going to place a value of like a running back 1 on him, because the recent production has the 1 spike game, but it's kind of mixed in between going on bye and 2 duds around it. If you're looking a little cheaper, you're like, I'd love to have Judkins. My team stinks though, I can't really afford it. If you're looking for someone who's like a low-end 2 to kind of a flex running back, but that has upside long-term to be someone we're trusting at running back 2, I would say it's Aaron Jones. Now, he left with a minor AC joint sprain this last week, but after the game, he said that he's fine. He said that he's played through this injury before. He said that it should take a couple days to get better. I mean, not fully healthy, right? But at this point, no player in the NFL is fully healthy, right? No one's 100%. Everyone's playing through something. But he said it's minor. He said they held him out of the game for like precautionary reasons. They didn't really have time to go up and get an x-ray to see how bad it was. And so just to be safe, they didn't put him out there. But he said he fully expects to play this week. We'll see. I mean, players can say that sometimes. It's not like a guarantee that he's going to play. But the expectation is this is a very minor injury, and I would anticipate him playing this weekend. And you can use the injury designation as leverage in the trade market, being like, hey, he's an older running back that's banged up. We don't even know if he's going to play this week. If the person needs production, if the person, doesn't maybe necessarily even need him as that running back 2 or flex, if they're more so, flex to bench for them, I think he's a good player to go after. I mean, he dominated Mason in snaps and opportunities last week. He looked way better than Mason has looked this season. It's pretty clear that they probably should be close to featuring Aaron Jones rest of the season. Vikings' second best playoff strength of schedule for running backs. They've already had their bye, so you get them each week moving forward. Two great upcoming matchups at home in a dome against the Ravens and Bears, two defenses we're not totally scared of, and two offenses that can absolutely push the Vikings to where, because if they were going up against a horrible defense, horrible offense, it's good for the running backs, but that also pushes them more into a Jordan Mason game script where maybe he's running the ball a lot in the second half, not as much Aaron Jones getting a ton of carries, and maybe if they don't throw the ball a lot, it doesn't help. Those are two games where they're going to have to score. The Vikings are probably, I would say 1-1 is probably what you'd expect from that. They could go 2-0, they could go 0-2, but I think the point is it's not going to be two games where they're winning by 2 touchdowns, right? These are two teams that can absolutely beat the Vikings, so it's a great game environment. If the offense on the other side can push them, that's more an Aaron Jones game where maybe they get up, but if they caught up to that point, they had to score a lot of touchdowns. He may have scored. He'll be used in the receiving game as well. That boosts fantasy production. I don't know. It just feels like a really good spot to trade for him. And then there's a very real chance, later in the year, when we look at the fantasy playoffs, he's just a locked and loaded running back too. I mean, their fantasy playoff schedule is Dallas, the Giants, and then a massive game with probably huge playoff implications, championship weekend against the Lions. Just good spots for Aaron Jones rest of the season. He's looked better than Jordan Mason. I think he's a great play at running back too moving forward. If you're looking more at the high end and you're like, all right, I want to go higher than Judkins. I want a true running back one. I still think the number one name has to be Derrick Henry. He looked great last week, but since he didn't score, only 12.6 half PPR points. So still really hasn't hit. Honestly, he's getting unlucky in the touchdown department. I think rest of the season, he's just going to blow so many running backs out of the water. There's a chance he finishes a top 3 running back for the rest of the season. Baltimore is favored in every single game rest of season. We've said this for years now. He's a high-end running back one, at times the running back one overall in wins, more so a low-end running back 2 in losses. Not going to be that many games rest of the season, if any. There's a real chance Baltimore just wins out, but they might lose 1-2 games rest of season. Baltimore's probably going to score 28 to 31 points per game over the rest of the season. And some of the upcoming matchups for Derrick Henry are just scary good. I mean, they're 8-point favorites this week against the Browns. They're 11.5-point favorites against the Jets in week 12. My goodness, that's a blow-up spot. They get 2 matchups against the Bengals in weeks 13 and 15. So we're looking at nuke spots for the next 5 weeks. One drawback is that in the semifinals and the finals, he faces the Patriots and the Packers. But I don't think it matters that much. I think he's going to have so many amazing games leading up to the fantasy semifinals that he's going to just carry your team into that point. And yes, I don't think the rushing production is going to be that great in those spots, but it's not a guarantee that those two teams shut him down. And he could easily just score a touchdown in either one. And if he scores a touchdown, he's going to be totally fine. But I think the value in acquiring him is more so that he'll carry you into the semifinals and finals. And at that point, you have other players on your team that even if he doesn't drop a nuke, he can still have gotten you there and everyone else can carry you to the finish. The other high-end running back I'd probably look at is DeVon Achane, because I think a lot of people, especially those who have Achane, are just a little bit nervous that the Dolphins might tank, that they might go to these younger backs, but I don't really see that happening. I could see a little bit of the early down workload shifting over to Ollie Gordon or Jalen Wright, but you don't really care about the rushing volume for Achane. If he lost a couple of carries, he's just not, that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant for his fantasy production. All of it's coming through the air and through touchdowns, which he's going to maintain. And they could have fired, I think this is a big thing for me. Last week, they let their GM go. It was a mutual decision, let's be honest. They fired him. To let him go, they could have at that time said, we're firing Mike McDaniel, we're moving on, we'll put an interim head coach in there, and then we'll hire someone new in the offseason. But they didn't. And the latest reporting is that McDaniel will stay the head coach at least through the end of the season, that he will finish out the season and they might retain him moving forward after that, because it's still somewhat of an unknown if it's him or it's the fact that they just have absolutely no one to throw to, right? When you really only have Achane, you only have Jalen Waddle, you don't have the most talent out there. Tua's look pretty bad at times. So it's still a little bit unknown, at least, if they got improved quarterback play, if they acquired more weapons in the receiving game, if it's him or if it's the players. My guess is still that they'll probably move on, get a different head coach. But to me, it doesn't matter, right? This is great news for Achane because the leash is a little bit longer on McDaniel than we thought and we assumed it was before. But he still knows, okay, I am either coaching right now to keep this job or I am coaching right now for the next head coaching cycle because someone, if they perform well rest of the season, is going to give him a job as either an offensive coordinator or head coach. That is just going to happen. And so if that's the case in his mind, do you really think that Achane and Waddle are going to have reduced roles rest of season? They're going to be like, all right, let's see what we have in Ollie Gordon, in Jalen Wright. Let's just kind of bench Achane rest of season. What does McDaniel care? If he is coaching for his job, he is putting these guys out there every play. He is designing the offense around them. And you combine that with the third best playoff strength of schedule. I mean, Achane might cook to end the season. Like after their week 12 bye, they get the Saints. They'll probably win that game. The Jets, they'll probably win that game. And 2 games that you'll probably have Achane go off. Steelers, Bengals, Bucks. So I think we're looking at like win, probably a loss to the Steelers, but maybe a somewhat close game. Bengals, maybe they don't win that spot, but that game is probably going to have like a 52.5 point total, and Achane's probably going off. And then the Bucks, I mean, they'll probably lose that championship weekend, so we don't really care what the outcome of the game is at that point. Probably bad rushing production for Achane in that spot, but good receiving production expected. So in those final 5 weeks, I'm seeing 3 nukes and then 2 other games that he's probably going to rack up a lot of receptions, still be very valuable in fantasy. So to me, if people are really scared of this team just tanking, going with Ollie Gordon rest of season and not using Achane, I think maybe that outcome is overvalued a little bit. If McDaniel is fighting for his job, he's going to use Achane, and the matchup set up pretty well for them to actually have some wins, actually have some decent production on offense, and it's correlated. If they're winning games and doing well on offense, not only is Achane doing better, but the leash gets longer and longer on McDaniel. And so you're like, okay, now he needs multiple terrible games to get fired. And we'll get so far into the season where you won't even have multiple games left. So I think the risk is kind of overstated. He's a great running back pick rest season. At wide receiver, I still think the number one you're going after is Zay Flowers. I won't go over him in depth because we've talked about him every single week, and he hasn't like truly hit yet, but he's my wide receiver 17 rest of season. I'd be very excited to play him in the flex spot every week, or especially in like a 3 wide receiver league, playing him at wide receiver 3. I think that's awesome, and I think you can get him for flex value. I don't think the value is that high in the trade market. Again, like I said, Baltimore is going to score a ton of points the rest of the season. He's their clear wide receiver 1. He's got a great target share. Having Lamar Jackson back is obviously beneficial to him. They're going to need to be winning these games, keeping their foot on the gas. Like, it's just, he's going to be good rest of season. I trust him. I trust him a lot more than a lot of these other like low-end wide receiver 2s that have a lot more up and down production. He's going to get usage every week. He's a great pick to go after because he won't cost that much. I'd say beyond him, top option, especially if you're like a good team. If you're like, we're heading into week 10, so you've got 9 games. If you're like 4-5, 5-4, I may be a little bit more hesitant to do this one for Ricky Pearsall just because of the unknowns. But if you are 6-3 or better, I think Pearsall's a really good player to go after. Now, I genuinely have no idea when he's going to be back, but when he is back, he's going to have Purdy back at quarterback as well, and he's probably going to crush rest of the season when that happens. There's the obvious risk here because this injury is just taking so much longer to recover from, not only than we expected, than the team expected as well. Like if they thought it would take this long, he would have gone on IR. So it's taking longer to recover than they thought it was. But people are panicking, and the person that drafted him is probably not crushing right now. And so you might be able to get him for like flex value, kind of a flex wide receiver for him. And it's really more so if that team needs to win. Like if that team is just benching him every week, hearing all these reports of like, oh, he's kind of close to returning, and then nothing happens all week, and they're like, hey, I guess got to bench him again. And maybe they're like 4-5 and they feel like they have to win right now. If you can maybe just swap, this is the one time where I'd be okay kind of swapping same position. I hate doing 1-for-1 trades at the same position because you're just swapping randomness at that point. But if you can offer them someone who's definitely playing this week, but is really just a flex wide receiver that doesn't have a ton of upside, but that they can play this week, they might be willing to accept that. And if you're 6-3, 7-2, 8-1, you're sitting there like, okay, I can kind of take the hit on Pearsall because number one, your team's probably pretty good, so you can maybe afford to not even play him rest of the season. But number two, you can afford to take the hit. And so like if you gave up someone who maybe is somewhat needed this week, you can lose. If you're like 7-2 and you go to 7-3, you're probably still making the playoffs unless you completely lose out and just do horrible. You're probably still making the playoffs. So it doesn't really matter that much what you do this coming week. Get Pearsall on your team because if he comes back healthy, if they're going to get Purdy back healthy either this week or next week. Once those two things occur, he's going to be like a weekly wide receiver 2 for this team. He is definitely better than Juwan. From what we have seen this season, Pearsall is going to be their top wide receiver because Ayuk still seems like he's going to miss a decent amount more time. So he's going to be awesome when he's back, and you can afford to take that risk if you have a good record. And so I would do so, especially again if the team that has Pearsall is struggling. Looking at the higher end, I'd go after Nico Collins. Not expecting a big game from him this week just because CJ Stroud is probably going to miss this week. Unlikely that with backup quarterback play, he's going to have a great game. But that's something you can use to your advantage. The team that has Nico is probably not off to a super hot start. And so if they're frustrated with the performance, they see a backup quarterback, they see a low projection probably on fantasy sites, they're going to be like, I really don't love this. And maybe a player that going into the season would have been deemed untouchable is not exactly untouchable right now. He's been a pretty big disappointment, but to be fair, it's pretty easy to like explain each week why he hasn't been that good. He basically hasn't posted good numbers against really good defenses because their offensive line is bad. Like you just look through their schedule and that can account for every single bad game. Week 1, Texans get shut down by an elite Rams defense. In weeks 2 through 5, he has some solid games, but he can't really hit a ceiling in week 4 and 5 because they won 26-0 and 44-0. So they obviously didn't need to throw the ball in the second half. Then he gets concussed against another great defense in week 7. So he has a dud. Then CJ Stroud gets concussed against a great defense again in week 9. So he only manages 7 for 75, which is a totally fine stat line. And he had like 10, 11 targets over these last 2 games. But it's like, it just kind of keeps happening. It's like great defense does bad. Then he has some good games in a row, but they're dominating teams, don't need to throw it. Then he gets concussed. Then Stroud gets concussed. It's like there's always been a reason, and even in these concussion games, again, playing really good defenses on the other side. So we've got a couple games rest of the season where they do play good defenses. I don't know that he'll have amazing games in those matchups, but not over the next 2 weeks and not in the fantasy playoffs. So he's got good matchups next 2 weeks. Fantasy playoffs, he gets the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Chargers. Those are 3 either dome or good weather games and 3 teams that shouldn't give the Texans offensive line too many issues. You would also expect CJ Stroud back at that point, right? For the fantasy playoffs, you expect him back. I would imagine he's going to miss. He might miss 2 games, might miss 1 or 2 games moving forward. But truly, like if we're looking for the fantasy playoffs, and again, probably a move you make if you're like looking good. I don't know how much we're trading for him. If you're in win now mode, 3 or 4 wins, do you really want to trade for CJ Stroud or for Nico Collins right now with CJ Stroud probably not playing? No. But if you have 6 or more wins, you are looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs. Those are great matchups. Stroud will be back. And they're matchups that I don't think the pass rushes on those teams are good enough to fully take advantage of the bad offensive line play for the Texans. And if that is the issue in good weather games with Stroud, he is going to be a wide receiver 1 in those weeks. And he's going to probably have the games you were expecting when you had him to start the season. I still only view him probably as like a low-end wide receiver 1, but I honestly think you can get him cheaper than that. I will close by reminding everyone that the goal is not to do these 1-for-1 trades at the same position. Again, I think the difference or the exception to that rule is Pearsall this week because he's injured, right? And so if you trade a healthy player for an injured one, maybe you get a benefit in the long term. And if they're looking short term, it can be a good deal. But you never really want to be like, okay, Nick has like this player as the wide receiver 14. He has Nico as the wide receiver 12. I think that's what I have him. It's like 11 or 12, somewhere in that range. I'm going to do a 1-for-1 trade to move 2 spots. It's just like at that point, usually players are so close that it's really not worth doing that because people can kind of flip-flop. You can have injuries. Like I would really want to be getting a lot more value than that. And you're not going to get that, right? Your goal in the trade market is not to try and like decimate another team in the trade. Your goal is to look at this team and say, okay, you've got Nico Collins. You have really struggled at the running back position. You are 4-5 and need to win now. I will take Nico Collins. You have a lot of depth at wide receiver. You can afford to kind of take that hit. I will give you maybe a running back 2. You are getting crushed at running back. You need this running back 2. This benefits both of us. That is the best thing you can do. You look at Derrick Henry. It's like, you know what? You have maybe worked out at running back. Maybe they have 3 running backs that are really solid, but they're terrible at tight end. They're terrible at quarterback. They're terrible at wide receiver. They're terrible at something. And it's like, okay, maybe, this 6th or 7th best tight end combined with, a high-end wide receiver 2, and that can help you at both positions. You don't take the big hit at running back. Those are the trades that get done. It's not just blindly sending an offer to a team 1 for 1 in a position, or even like 2 for 1, but they have a great team and they'll never use the 2 players you're sending them. Look at what they actually need and tell yourself, would you accept this trade on the other side? Do you genuinely think it helps them? Because if the answer is no, they're not going to accept it and you're just wasting your time. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or Spotify so you don't miss tomorrow's rankings video. It's the big one each week. I'll have the rest of season rankings updated on the site basically each day moving forward, but they're fully updated through Wednesday. So take a look at that if you want help on trades. That'll do it for this one, though. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next one.